Hey people, Shaman Hawk here for Shamanic Lodge. Going to talk a little bit about dark sides and the three biggest blockages that I can see that really hold people back on their spiritual evolution, personal evolution, and that's fear, guilt, and shame. And just about all this always comes from religious and social programming. And so, what is bad on one side of the world is totally okay on the other side of the world, and vice versa. And this is what people grow up with. You know, so many times when people are growing up and they just kind of follow their urges or follow their instincts and impulses like children do, and then for something that feels good and natural, and then they just get shamed. Younger people getting into their puberty and they're exploring, the opposite sex and genders and so on, and then get shut down, for something that just feels so right, at that right time when all those hormones are going crazy. But then people go through their lives, and then some people are just like artists in general, artists, musicians, and inclined along that line. And then their social or family programming says, oh, no, that's for losers. You need to be a banker and a business person like daddy and daddy before him, grandpa, and so on. And then they grow up with this, and they learn to hold back their real desires, their real personal traits, and then they just feel shut down. And then when they finally come to see somebody like me, they're like, yeah, I'm a total success, but I can't figure out how come I'm not happy. And everybody else says that they wish they had my life, and I'd love to trade them for it. And I'm like, well, what would make you happy? I'm like, I don't know. And so many people tell me this. It's just crazy. And so you have to go start exploring back in, okay, so when you were a kid, let's say like 6 years old, first starting school, what did you draw pictures of? What did you want to be when you grow up? And like kids, that changes. It could change week to week, day to day, or so on, but they have some vision of what they want to do that would make them happy and make them happy with themselves and their own personal achievements. And you got to get back to that point and then say, well, why did you stop? And so on. Same thing in relationships, well, if you're not happy, you were never happy marrying this person, why did you? Well, getting older, well, the biological clock, oh, everybody else was getting married, and well, that doesn't mean you have to. And then they're feeling ashamed that they did it, and then they want to get out of it, but now they got to deal with all this other stuff, So it's sad, I look at people, talking to a therapy person in Dusseldorf, Germany, and she said, look out over the city. We were in a TV tower up there. It's a restaurant. And she said every third window is a classic or clinical depression case. And I'm just like, wow. And I looked it up, yeah, and then I found another disturbing trend that 11 to 15% of an industrialized nation's population is suicidal. And people, when you start talking to these people, when they're at that edge, and they have that fear, guilt, shame thing going on. My apprentices, I often work with me when I'm doing therapies with clients, and they'll get shocked at some of the things that they hear. And this is why apprenticeships are so important, because you get to see the shamanic work in action. And again, back in Germany, I was working with one woman, and my apprentice then, Walter, I just had this feeling to ask this girl, you ever think of suicide? Now you look at this woman, absolutely beautiful woman in business, you start looking at her life and everything, you're like, oh, wow, it's a successful young lady. And as soon as I finished that sentence, she said, yes, just that quick. And Walter just looked, and I'm like, yeah. And so part of the apprenticeship too is like getting to that point where you can feel what to ask, not just logically go through your series of questions, but feel it. And so in further talking, we got into other deeper issues with her, and again, people just keep them to themselves. So when I first started off with this, I was talking about dark side. And again, a lot of people want to explore what they call their dark side, but the reality, they're accepting society's view of what they want. and calling it the dark side. And I'm like, well, if you really like it, and if you really want to do this, and you don't see any physical or spiritual or mental harm in it, what would be the problem? They're like, well, when you say it that way, logically, there is none. I'm like, yeah, silly me, logical hog, right? And so the other thing that shamans do on a very, very large scale is we keep people's secrets. We help people dive into these areas that they call their dark sides, and help them explore these other places. So sometimes it's just for release, sometimes it can be for healing, sometimes it's past life bleed throughs. We don't really know until we just go a little bit further. And it's a touchy ground. You have to, this takes a lot of intense training in awareness of knowing when to take somebody, because you can say, oh yeah, well, people like this BDSM thing. We started looking at that movie or the book 50 Shades of Grey. It was a bestseller for a reason. Who mostly bought that book? Women. And I wouldn't dare to say it's one reason or two or three main reasons, because I've heard everything. At least I think I did, because every time I tell myself, God, I just think I've heard it all, I get surprised and hear something else. And people usually start off with, I'm going to tell you something and you probably think I'm crazy. And I'm like, try me. And it's real non-judgmental, because, even though I get surprised, a lot of the surprise is like, wow, I'm more surprised at myself for not thinking that this was possible with this person, because I got into the programming of how I'm looking at this person. And I would think that they would or would not. That's a little piece of programming still left in me to make that kind of assumption or judgment call. So it's certainly not on them, So, but we help people explore through this. And sometimes the process that the apprentice is watching can be shocking for them, because sometimes these things can be exposed and it's a surprise. Orshi and I, she's on Shamanic Woman on Instagram. In her apprenticeship, we were working with a young lady, and from massage turned to a slip, and an impact, around the neck of this young woman. And the response that we got was a sign of pleasure. And then just experimenting a little bit more to see where she wanted to go with this, and she was right down that road. And she'd been down that road before with people, as she said, were complete fucking idiots, And so I couldn't say that there's one type of exploration technique, because people are unique and each one of them has their own road to go down, their own path to go down to that destination, or what they call their dark sides. And so with this particular young lady, it was mostly, a little bit of the pain, but then a lot of mental stuff. She really liked the twist of that. Where somebody else I was working with a couple years later was more into the artwork of it. And so we went that way. So, and the destinations that they go to are just so completely different. And so the training involved in taking people down these areas is more about constant exploration and being willing to adapt and change moment by moment, while you're keeping all those changes and exploration techniques filed neatly in your mind. Because for the next session, you need to go refer to all that. And you can't stop and start writing things down, taking notes, because those moments matter. So, and why take people down that? Do you enjoy doing those things to people? No, I don't. What I really enjoy is the exploration process. Now, people can say, well, that's your dark side doing that. Okay, we can go there too. But the point of it is, programming is the big thing. And from the programming stem those three big blockages of fear, guilt, and shame. And if you ever want to do this work as a career, you have to really just look at each person unique, and appreciating, not judging, but appreciating the journey that they're on, and make that journey the best journey that you can for them. There are safeguards you have to watch out for. Some people, when they're locked up, it's kind of like that horse that's been in the barn too long on on a hailstorm on a tin roof, and they just can't. And when you open it, you're not holding them back. They're going to sprint, and they could hit fences, vehicles, and all kinds of things. You got to make sure that you know exactly where this person is going to go. At least some spectrum of degrees that you can control when they really bolt and start to and go full speed out of that stall. And so that's a lot of the training in that, gauging the speed of progress, marking the speed of progress, marking the decline of progress, or the void that they start to fall back into. Some of the fear, guilt, and shame, especially the guilt and the shame part, come from after the people do the experience. During it, they're feeling so free, and then after that, it's that, oh my God, what was I doing? What was I thinking? Why did you take me there? Well, actually, you took me there, so don't do that. But then they got that thing in their mind, and then you have to go through a series of questions. So you're not telling them what really happened. They're telling you. They're remembering what happened. And it's like, yeah, it sounds different now, doesn't it? And so it's a touchy place, but it's a place that I go down often with people because it's that popular of an issue, I suppose. And maybe issue is not the correct or kindest way to put it, but it is where people have a tendency to go. And this is also, with an untrained person, this is a disaster waiting to happen. And unfortunately, I've worked with a lot of people who started down that journey with the wrong person, untrained person, and inexperienced person. And this is also something really important, people, that you really need to work with someone who has the hands-on experience, the years of hands-on experience. So many people out there want to take a course and then get right out there and just start changing people's lives. And that is a disaster waiting to happen. I comment on that a lot, but that's why we have apprenticeships, and that's why the apprenticeship requires the apprentice to be there in the working environment. So that person then, when they're out in their work, doesn't create that disaster. And then after the apprenticeship, we do what we call the 2-year journey, and I still get this from people that I've trained to become shamans. They still call me up almost daily, telling me about what they're working on, how the progress is going. And in that kind of a situation, I just ask questions, to get them to, if I see them going all this way and not at all entertaining anything over here, I ask questions from this perspective, give them something more well-rounded to look at. So it's an ongoing training process. So these people that oh, well, I've always been a shaman. My cat told me I was a shaman. No, don't do that. Don't go down with that road with these people. And the same thing with, doing the readings. And anybody else is doing these other, all these catchy names. I heard one the other day. Recapitulations, the family constellation, that can be sabotaged so easy. The best work is just coming from the one-on-one appointments, and that can be done online, that can be done in person. But like I said, get somebody with experience, get someone you can trust to keep your secrets. All right, and that's about it for now. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments, or you can write me at shamaniclodge@gmail.com. That's about it. Catch you guys later.